Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know if it's better. Should I take this off? Um, how does it, is it better now? Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Actually, maybe there's a bit of feedback. Hang on, speak again.
Okay, so maybe I'll just do this. I'll just do this. Hold on. Sometimes there is feedback.
Good to see
See if
you.
it goes. Is it better? Is it okay?
Yeah, it is a little bit better.
Okay. Oh, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
It's last time we spoke that I shared with you that I wanted to talk to you for this project was like a year ago, wasn't it? It was like a long time.
Yeah, but you're doing it, hey?
Oh my goodness.
And time just goes so quickly now.
Ah, it just I think I was sharing somebody. I think it took me this long to kind of really understand how I wanted to do it.
Yeah,
And
I'm looking forward to finding
yeah,
out more about it.
yeah, so first I'll just because the first people that I started talking to, I forgot to introduce them completely. I was just so casual that I was like, I need to introduce them. So I'll just introduce you. So I'm talking to Charlotte Young, and I'll introduce you informally. And then if you want to do a little CV after, that's totally cool. I'll just do the way that I'm introducing people is through my lenses and why I wanted to have this conversation with you.
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, we met many years ago. So we never studied in the same cohort, but we met many years ago through Jane Collins.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're a woman's mysteries teacher and you're a dancer and a writer. And I I think I just really always appreciated your wisdom. Like you always would bring things from movement and different things, and I appreciate it every time I heard you. We sat in circles together a few different times, and then Jane mentioned to me when I said to her that I wanted to talk to somebody that had done something like written something on menopause or perimenopause. She said, "Oh, you should talk to Charlotte." And so this was my entry point because I think the perimenopause menopause phase is really misunderstood in culture. And I'm just really curious. I'm reading your book at the moment. I haven't finished, but I appreciated the way that you've woven different bits and because you also initiate girls into womanhood, right? So you do the rites of
Yeah.
passages of when girls are young and they start menstruating, and then now you're approaching that rite of passage from the end bit, like the last
Mm.
bleed, which is really beautiful. So I was really curious about your journey into this work, but maybe if you want to start just by sharing anything that you feel it's relevant about your work and or anything that you want to share.
Well, I'll take up from what you've said because it really was through Jane's work. So that was 12 years ago. I did her Four Seasons journey. And that was really the first time I learned about the cycle or our cycles and the wisdom of the cycles and the way we're so plugged into the earth and
Mm,
the moon, especially the moon. And there was a part of me that was just pretty, I mean, maybe outraged is a bit strong, but there was definitely this questioning of why is it only now at 42 that I'm learning this?
mm,
And so from there, I studied to be a doula because I
mm,
really was passionate about birth um, but then from working with women, birthing women and being with women in their bodies, I did realize that there was just this disconnect for some of them between them and their bodies,
mm-hmm,
and realized it starts at our first bleed, or the lead up even to our first bleed. That's kind of when our relationship with our bleeding body, our amazing creative body, begins.
mm,
And so I did this facilitator training, and yeah, have done many circles with girls, and it's always beautiful. It's such a lovely kind of experience to work with them, and they come
mm-hmm,
in very like shoulders hunched, and my mum made me come, I don't want to
Mm,
be here. And
mm,
by lunchtime they're kind of just sort of holding all the menstrual products and
mm,
fiddling with them, and very much more confident about what's to come. And then their
mhm,
mums come in the afternoon and share their first period story, and it's just a lovely introduction. But then going back to, or forwards, I guess, to the perimenopause aspect, it kind of just felt like a natural transition for me to start being curious about that side of our transition, because I was going through it. Plus, I
mhm,
had my kind of facilitator, educator's hat on,
mhm,
and realized again, culturally, I just think we're sort of in the West, just dealt a bad hand when it comes to
mm,
our bodies, our biological bodies, because
mm,
it's, and it says it, everything, the way the girls come in, it's just like, this is something to be ashamed of, and I'm
mm,
not comfortable, I'm embarrassed, I don't want to talk about it. There's occasionally the rare girl that's like, I
mm,
really want to be here, I want to find out more, but mostly it's like, I don't want to know. And I've also learned that that's to do with change,
mm,
like
mm,
the women at the other end going through perimenopause. It's the same. I don't want to change. I love
mm,
my body in its summer
mm,
element, and
mm,
the sort of full bloom. And
mm,
it's, you're going down. You're actually going over the top of that midday summer kind of part
mm,
of the wheel, and you're coming down towards actually eventually death. And in a way, it's a bit of a practice.
mm,
Sounds a bit dramatic, but it's a bit of a
mm,
practice for death,
mm, mm,
because it's to do with
mm,
letting go of just as the girls have to let go of being completely in the realm of childhood,
mhm,
us women have to let go of being in our full blooming energy and attraction,
mm,
and it, whatever you have your value on, I think is the
mhm.
hardest to let go of. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love this. Some questions came to me when I was hearing you, but I think that first I wanted to hear about your experience. So when it was the same for me. It was I think I was early 30s when I um came into contact with this wisdom, but still I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, it's crazy that I didn't know that. And then everything started making sense in my mind because I come from Brazil, and in Brazil is a very it's almost like it zooms into the problems that we see in different cultures. I think I see this everywhere, but I see in some cultures it seems to be worse. Like, for example, the cesarean section rate in Brazil when I birthed my daughter 12 years ago was 85%. So there's the level of disconnect is tremendous, and it was a lot of booked cesareans, right? So they were those ones that you book before, and of course I say that without any judgment on the women, but just noticing the water that we're swimming in. So I was swimming in that water my whole life. So just traveling a lot and then coming to Australia, which feels more connected, at least to nature. And when you feel more connected,
Mm.
so camping, so there's a lot of camping here, there's a lot of bushwalk, there's a lot of bare feet walk and all that kind of stuff. It feels that somehow I started meeting women here that were not necessarily super alternative, and they still wanted to birth naturally. For example, maybe they didn't have the connection to their bodies, and they didn't understand the cycle, so they didn't have any of that, but they still had a good, like, I want to do this aspiration, at least, for birthing naturally, even if the system doesn't help them. Whereas in Brazil at that time, it's changing, but at that time I didn't have any friends that had the aspiration. So the thought
Mm.
of wanting to birth naturally, it was a crazy thought. It was like, why would you even want that? And yeah, which was, I mean, there's lots to explore there,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, is there anything that comes up for you as I share that, or
Well, I do remember you years ago telling me that statistic, and just being really shocked that that was it was so high. And I
Mm,
totally get, I love the way you frame it of it's the water we're swimming in, because I think one of the things as women, and especially around the body, is there's just so much judgment about my way is the right way and you've got to
mm,
do my way. Uh,
mm,
and and we all have such a different experience,
mm,
firstly, of our relationship with our body, just us and our body.
mm,
And then it's whichever culture we're in. So that's the sort of overlay on top of that.
mhm,
And yeah, and I think mostly culturally it has been patriarchal, you know, in
mm,
most places.
mm, mm,
And so therefore the odds are against us in the beginning. But
mm.
I love what comes to mind is, Clarissa Pinkola Estes.
Yeah, yes.
She talks about our bodies being our companion,
Mm,
our first friend, our companion. And I really feel that. And I also want to speak to women that struggle like with endo and that, have a
mhm,
lot of pain. So like I
mhm, mhm.
it's a tricky one, like I
Yeah,
would just want to acknowledge that, and that's another level,
yeah,
like it's easy to talk about um being, being friends with your body when everything's going well.
yeah, yeah,
But when things start to go badly, then it's
yeah,
kind of like, how do we navigate that? And this includes birth as well, with pain. And,
yeah.
how do we, because again, one of the things, whether I think you're whatever gender you identify, whatever body you're in,
Mm,
it's like we bypass pain. And
yeah,
that's also goes for emotional pain as well. It's
yeah,
not just physical. We just don't do pain. And I
yeah.
think it's half, that's where a lot of our problems come from. Is it?
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with you. And I think that's such a difficult, like it's such a powerful lesson that the whole menstrual cycle journey teaches us as humans. I mean, to be with change, to be with pain, to be with the in breath and out breath. But still, because we're trained as society to not be with any of those like pain or the descent or the anything that is more I suppose difficult, that requires a little bit more um I don't know how to put it. Maybe just maybe certain capacity, because it's really hard as well, because now trauma has become really prevalent, so then it's another layer of
Mm,
understanding, which is like, well, we have really disconnected from our bodies. It's just so painful to be in relationship to reality and what we're doing with the earth and everything, so then we just compartmentalized everything, and therefore the menstrual cycle teaching, I don't know if you experienced that, like I'm curious about if you have any split in your either group of friends, or if you see that in the world. I certainly experienced that. For example, I can see that this conversation is very easy. Like I know where you're coming from, so I understand we have this shared awareness, and it's not just a thought, like we experienced it, we know it's not just a belief. I'm not just saying like, Charlotte, do you believe that we have this cycle thing? We're actually
yeah.
we've learned, and we're doing it, we understand it. But there's friends, and there's a lot of people that I know in the outer world that that's still a concept that's like weird. So when I talk about it in different spaces, I experience it being challenging even for women. So I'm curious about if you experience that kind of divide in a way, not in a bad way, just the um that's a difficult thing to talk about, even especially with, I'd say especially with women that haven't yet thought about it or reconciled with it, or yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's evident firsthand when I'm doing the workshops with the girls and the mums.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually a class, like I do, the group comes, one of the mums usually comes and, says, oh, we want to run this workshop with you. So I kind of work with her in getting the group on board. But often there's a handful of women that are just like, no, why the
Mm-hmm.
hell would I want to go and talk about periods?
Mm-hmm.
Just not interested. and 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 to me that's actually like there's no judgment. I get it. I do
Mm,
get it.
mm,
um but we always light a candle for that because then it's that girl is missing out on the peer experience. I actually feel for the girl the next day because they do henna, and so the other, the girls that come and they have their little locket and they sort of bounce into school, and
mm,
there is, I just feel like, oh, just on a social level they've missed out
mm,
from
mm,
their peers.
mm,
um and then, yeah, there is like talking, if I drop things in, I try and be open though, and just not, because there is a part of me that, and I guess this is sort of more the middle age post menopause. I'm not quite, like, it's been about 7 or 8 months since my
mhm,
last period, so I've
mm,
stopped counting actually, but it's
mm,
not a year.
mm,
But I just know that now I am much more vocal, whereas before I would have been a bit quieter and a bit shyer. It's just like,
mm,
you know, fuck it.
mm,
I'm just
mm,
gonna say what I want to say, what's in my
mm,
mind, and
mm,
make it, because if we don't, then
mm,
it continues, and it's
mm,
just changing it little bit by little bit. But it's, yeah, sometimes it often falls on deaf ears, and it's not like I'm being evangelical, because I
mm,
don't think it's about shoving stuff down people's throats, but it's just
mhm,
about being honest
mm,
about and open about my experience, and that it does make a difference.
mm,
It does make a difference to know the cycle, and to know. I was talking to a woman who ran anger management courses for women,
mm,
and I was like, "Oh, do you have anything about the cycle in there? Do you do any kind of education around, what happens in our cycle, and the kind of hormonal kind of just
mm,
ups and down?" And she
mm.
kind of
Look,
looked at me and quickly
mm,
changed the subject about how women
mm,
need to be allowed to feel anger, and which I completely
mm,
agree.
mm,
But I just know, my when I was cycling, my more reactive times were
mm,
when I was at a certain place in my cycle, and it was just really handy for me to
mm,
know about those
mm.
ahead
Yeah,
of time, so it would be okay, more rest needed, just simple things like that. Yeah.
yeah. No, I agree with you. I'd even say because recently, so I'll just share a little bit of where I'm coming from for this project. Is like, so the project's called Fine Line Full Circle, and it's birthing with maybe a handful or a little bit more of conversations, and then I'll add to them. And most of them, I think you're the first woman I'm having a conversation with. I'll have a few others this week, but it's mostly has it been with men, and which, because the whole conversation is not it's not about the cycle, but the cycle is a very, very important part of remembering aspects of the feminine that have been forgotten in the wider culture. So the fine line represents the, like, this more testosteronic way of, I don't even know if that's a word, being in the world. So more
Yeah.
like that. So fine line and full circle. And basically it's just learning how to dialogue between these two. So in individuals, so, and systemically, like how do we create different things if we understand one another much more deeply? So I'm kind of like, it's not I wouldn't say I'm educating men, because they're really intelligent in many fronts, but they actually don't have a lot of awareness of the cycle. And to me, in my own experience, it goes way beyond even the people that have a little bit of awareness of it. It can be really diluted into just
Mm.
PMS, or just, just a little bit of something. And I'm like, well, I'm actually really interested in the creativity that's the potential when women are not even ashamed, when we're much more unleashed and proud of our cyclical creativity. And from that, how can we create solutions for the climate crisis or whatever, like men and women? But so
Yeah.
women can be cyclical in these conversations. So that's my entry point, is we have different ways of engaging with the world. But first, a lot of women don't even know that we have different ways of engaging with the world. So maybe we have to first talk about these things first, and then we can start playing more creatively, and maybe even prototyping. Like, how would we, it's almost like a microcosm, because in some contexts I feel more free, and when I feel more free, I show more of myself, and then my creativity is more unleashed. Whereas in some contexts I feel a little bit more like, I feel that I can't say certain things. So if I can't say certain things, then I'm bound, the bandwidth of my creativity has to run in a very small track, and that
Yeah.
feels there's less potential. So that's what so that's the angle that where I'm coming from. And so I was gonna say that I totally hear with you with the mom that she didn't want to come, and I also feel your pain. I would feel the pain of that, because I go, there's a side of me that goes, no, it's necessary, and I hear your pain, and I understand why you don't want to talk about periods. And simultaneously, it's almost, if we don't prepare this new generation in a healthier way than we had in our past, then
Yeah.
it just takes longer. But it's, for the healing to happen. But that's, I suppose that's part of it, isn't it? It's just to understand that it takes time for this healing to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that whole I don't know what I was going to say, because I'm very taken with the visual of your fine line and full circle. It's a lovely name. And what comes to mind is the yin and the yang.
Yeah, yes,
Um,
exactly.
and in that also our own yin and yang, whatever
Mm-hmm.
gender.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think we have all been trained to be more yang
Mm-hmm.
and not be in our yin. And that's where I think, and that's what I was going to say, with the mums that do decide to say yes to it, that we have this mother's session then a few days before we meet in the evening, and I run through what we are going to the program. So I sort of give them a little thumbnail of the actual what the girls learn in the morning, and they really just, and then they share a little bit about their own story, because they almost need a practice to tell their first period story, because it's a rare thing that we do of talking, and then a lot of emotion in those mothers' evenings comes up, because it's a safe space to talk about this, and they don't realize until they start, oh, there's actually a lot there's a lot in me around this, and I've never thought about it, and so it's quite tender territory. And yeah, but I think it's that idea of, or just the beingness of knowing something and wanting to share it with everybody, but there's just some people are just like not interested, and that's okay, like, but I also feel your passion and drive to make a difference, and I love that, and I love that you're doing this project, because I think it's needed and it's important.
I as I was hearing, I was thinking, well, maybe that mom is gonna heal through her daughter, like through the context, isn't it? Like, if she has more pain and she didn't want to talk about it, like the mom that doesn't want to come, if there's a cohort of women, of girls already coming in her school, then slowly maybe this information trickles down in a different way that might be gentler for her, if she's not ready to go to a workshop or something like that.
Yeah. And you know what, it's also interesting, there's a tricky kind of aspect coming in around all the gender stuff, because there's so much gender awareness that it's I'm just noticing, like a couple of years ago, well, it's not my program, but she was up wanting to know why the founder had called it Celebration Day for Girls, because it was excluding those that
don't identify
differently.
Okay.
Yeah, but had a
So
girl's bodysuit.
how do you navigate that? How do
I
you,
don't know,
so
and I
where
don't
do you
even. Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard, because
mm,
it's so important not to exclude. I want to
mm,
include,
mm,
and I also feel like it's only just coming, this awareness around the cycle and
yeah
the importance of it. and it's like it could be kind of eclipsed by this other conversation around
Yeah,
gender.
yeah,
So
no,
it's a very tricky
totally.
one.
It is a very tricky one, and it's fascinating because I have this week, I'm having a conversation that I'll probably release at the same time. It's just gonna be at a different playlist on the YouTube channel, but it's a conversation that I'm having with a friend. She's become a friend, and she's transitioned, so she's a trans woman, and she's transitioned older. But it's interesting because we can have very deep conversations in which she holds and that's why I want to have a conversation with her, because it's such a tricky conversation. So you need to be able to have that conversation in calmness and in generosity, because she can hold the perspective that yes, it does feel like a complete spiritual opening for her, and for her it came from the place of she really identifies with the yin aspect of reality, let's say. Like it
Yeah.
tied in, and I don't want to paraphrase her, but it's a little bit like that. And it tied in with some spiritual awakenings, with some feminine um energies, and it does feel that she carried that before. And it's much more so she's wanting to basically be in relationship to the feminine in that overt way, and to her, it was so big that she wanted to, and so profound in her heart that she wanted to transition, which is a hard thing to do. So she did that. However, for young kids, it's a different conversation, because and that's why it's so tricky, because we don't have the awareness of the menstrual cycle. So we live in this world in which we can actually hold the assumption that living in a female body and living in a male body is the same, because it looks the same from the outside. Like, for example, there's conversations that I can have with some, especially men, uh, and they don't understand that actually the feminine experience of reality is different, like in a female body is different, because
Yeah.
the constructs have been reaffirming the line, right? So I choose the line because the line is not charged with like constructs of patriarchy. The guys are having a good time, or all these ideas that we might associate to
Yeah.
patriarchy. So it's more just this linear,
Yeah.
more. And whereas then girls, I'm just imagining girls coming to this world, and they start feeling the intensity of being cyclical, which is such a incredible way of being in the world. But then you don't have any role models in the larger world. So then you actually don't. I can understand that you probably wouldn't. It would make you crazy. Like, I'm just thinking a little 12-year-old girl. I have a 12-year-old, but she's been living with me, talking to her about that stuff since she was a baby. But
Yeah.
if she was in a different context and a different school, and she's feeling all these strong emotions, and then she's like, and she is more tomboyish by nature, like my girl. So you can put all these things on top. So you have these, I don't want to dress like this, or I don't. And why should I have a cycle? Like, if there's no plus in that experience, then it's like, why should I do it? So that's why I'm so passionate about it, getting the word out there, because it's not that I'm dismissing the um the desire for a spectrum of yin and yang combination. Some
Yeah.
people have 60% yin and 40% yang, or whatever. Like, the spectrum is true. And I think that in the future we could have a colorful expression. Like, we could have so many combinations, and just allow the combinations to just flower themselves and populate our world with color. That's beautiful. And we can't just eradicate that being a girl, that the majority of people will be women. We can't just eradicate those prevalent, more yang predominance, more yin predominance, which is more identified with circle, more identified with line, and that is the truth.
Yeah.
aspect of reality, because I think otherwise it just gets too complicated, too messy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the way you talk about that spectrum and the opportunity for color and the different aspects of or percentages. And I you see, this is a a menopausal thing where you just lose your train of thought.
Oh no, but that's good.
It'll come to me.
But
It'll
that's
come
good.
to me.
Tell
But
me. Yeah, but we don't have
yeah,
any. Yeah, we can just sit in
yeah.
silence for a little bit and role model a different way of conversing.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Just sitting back. Yeah. I haven't caught that thread of what I was going to say, but
But
I
this,
just know
but
that
this
it's
is.
so complicated.
I was just going to make a point to what you just said, because I think it's beautiful. And I think like part of the point of this whole project is to not only talk about it, but model to the best of my ability with my conversational partners what actually is hidden. So, for example,
Mm,
when you just said, oh, it escaped me. And I'm like, yeah. And that happens a lot with a lot of women all the time,
yeah,
and men, but it is a transition, and it's a powerful thing. And because this slowness, or the well, maybe I just need to be in silence for a moment, and this will come back later. So it reminds me, like the way it's not really a linear conversation, it's more that we're populating the space with
mm,
little gems, and every now and again we might get one and then finish at another time and I think this is really rich, and I experienced that a lot with my female friends, and yet it's still I see it still as there's a wrong narrative around it or something. I think it's because we just don't see it publicly, like this eloquence. We prefer it to be like, podcasts have to be precise or eloquent. Oh, I don't know. There's all sorts of
yeah,
ideas that we make. Just wanted to
yeah.
normalize. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I definitely feel that pressure to be in my old self, which was
Mm-hmm.
much more, could grab the words immediately, and especially the writing side of me. Like sometimes when I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, what's that word? And it's just it's like the same as your able-bodiedness starts to go as you age. You get a bit creakier. It's the same with the brain. It's just you don't manage to, the words don't download as quickly, and there's a bit of a struggle sometimes for the actual word to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice for you to give permission to just go, that's okay, let's just be in the silence. And and it's always, I am reminding myself to do that a lot more, but there's still, when you're in the thick of
Mm-hmm.
it, sometimes there's a like, oh, have I got
Mm-hmm.
dementia? Are people going to
Mm-hmm.
just think I'm really spacey? Like it's this sort of
Mm-hmm.
concern about not operating, one, like you used to, and
Mm-hmm.
two, how most people run on a lot of adrenaline and speed, whereas
Mm-hmm.
actually the invitation for all of us as we age is to go a little bit slower, and have that dreaming time
Mm-hmm.
and be in a different space that does open up, and there's a lot more richness, and it's also about going inside
Mm-hmm.
internally. And that's one thing that I have a little diagram of in the book about, from, if you look at this circle and then
Mm-hmm.
there's a line on the horizon,
Mm-hmm.
a half midway, and you have the two, we talked about the bookends of like the springtime and first period, and then the autumn time of last period. On the top of that circle
Mm-hmm.
is all outward. It's what you're like, answering the call of what society wants you to
Mm-hmm.
do. And
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of, you're building your nest or your career or your family, and
Mm,
it's all out, out, out. Whereas
mhm,
underneath that
mhm,
circle is actually more a soul calling of what
mm,
you're being in the soul and
mm,
the interiority of your life. And so,
mm,
after menopause, and then until your death, and then the other way, when you're born, it's all your childhood until you start your period. And I love that. I love that kind of
Mm,
knowledge. Really, again, it's in that cyclical, it's looking at the cycles.
I love that.
And yeah.
I love that, and it also makes me think of how, like, it's amazing. I think it's very humbling when I see you, like, you've done this work for so long, you run stuff like that, and I say that to people that I run things for too. Like, I'm still subjected to some things because I was a product of this culture. Like, I'm not outside of
Yeah.
it. I'm not like perfected. Like, oh, yes, I let go all the time so effortlessly. It's this constant undoing because I'm very aware that I'm a product of a culture that hasn't taught me this
Yes.
wisdom. So it's a constant um you know I don't see the word tension with problems. So I was going to use the word tension, but I don't problematize it. I see as a tension because I'm like, I have this healed inside of me, but every time I'm outside, the frames are not healed frames. They're negative. So somehow, so when you were saying, I totally hear you when you're saying, so for example, I've been investigating myself, the state shifts that I go through with different seasons of my cycle. So,
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm premenstrual and menstrual, it's very wordless for me. So as you were talking about, so and now I'm in peri, right? I'm 47, so I can see what you mean totally, and but the way I experience it, I'm like, wow, I'm fascinated by it because I'm like, it's so rich and there's less words, but it's this thickness, like it's thickness, it's so alive. There's so much aliveness. Not that the other ones haven't, but there's much more, as you say, there's a much more it's as close as I can imagine the line to be. I don't know what the line actually is because I'm not a man, like in a male body. But this one is so not a line. So so obviously not a line. And yet I'm like constantly having to put subtitles under myself when I'm talking to other people. Because if I say, oh, I don't have the words or something, I rarely have somebody saying to me, "Oh, that's wonderful."
Yeah.
I often say, "Oh, it's okay," like, or something that I feel I have to explain that I don't have the frame, that's a negative thing, that I think it's beautiful. So, but
Mm.
it's a tricky thing because in some ways there's a little part of me that does feel wronged because just the effort to explain myself constantly
Yeah.
robs me from the easefulness. It robs me from just
Yeah.
going, I can show up just as whatever I am in my cycle. It's not true.
Yeah.
um
And I'm curious, have you had the fire, the rage, and the
oh my god, it's
moments?
fascinating. Oh, oh, cursing now, bleep. I
Yes, sorry, I did earlier.
Oh, that's okay. It's good, right? It's my podcast, so I suppose I can do whatever. Can I do? I don't know. I'm just finding out. It's funny you asked that because what I'm experiencing at the moment, and then it'll be beautiful because you're some years ahead of me and you wrote a book about it. So I'm very curious about your perspective. But so what I have been experiencing, so just before I came to this call, like I had the most outward disagreement with my partner, like that I have ever had. Like it was a moment. And I was just like, whoa, like it was like there was a mix of different things. There was me wanting to be in a certain state for this particular call. So I was
Mm-hmm.
aware that I wanted to be in a certain state. So I wanted to be more in my, I wanted to remember some things, have access to my cognition and be clarity to talk to you and ask you some things. That actually went, actually, that's not just that it went. I'm experiencing the first time in my cycle that it's like the I'm on day 50, for example, And it's
Yeah.
the second day 50 that I have. Like I had never had that before. And to me, my experience of that feels like, I was trying to describe to a male friend of mine, it feels like I have like a very, very potent jet plane. Like I'm on this very potent plane, but I'm learning how to drive it. Like I don't know how to drive it. And usually the menstruation comes and decompresses my body. So this
Yeah.
the tension that has been built up, and I'm processing reality with awareness. So then, I go like, and it decompresses, and then there's like this pressure cooker, the valve opens,
Yeah.
and then I have a lot of space in my body to process
Mm-hmm.
reality again. But now with day 50, I'm like, it feels like I'm inside the pressure cooker with more pressure, more pressure, more pressure. And life is still requiring the normal things that life requires, 2 kids, life, starting a new project. My partner, like the disagreement was about, like we live in a big block of land. So there's these pressures, and what I experienced just like is the normal pressures, and there's more like my body, I it's exactly what I said. It feels like I'm upping my, instead of being just a slow plane, it's like the intensity of the plane is more, but I'm not yet a pilot. I'm not yet like, ooh, I really know how to do this. It's like, oh my God, it's so much tension. I'm gonna explode. Whoa. And then I was like,
Yeah.
anger came out like, and exploded. And anyway, and then I actually was doing a little meditation before coming here, and I was laughing halfway through. Like I decompressed my body, and then I was laughing. I was like, oh my God, I went off the rails.
Yeah, it is like that though. It is like that because in that, as you explain, that sort of pressure of you in your body is pushing out, but everything from the outside, those tasks are pushing in, and
Mm-hmm.
it gets harder and harder to do those tasks that just used to be quite natural. Like you could do a few at a time. It's like this single pointed focus is needed.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to try and kind of do everything. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like again that slowing. But I do think our partners have a bit of a road to travel alongside us with those explosive moments, because it's there, it's real, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a physiological, like it's visceral. You feel it in your body. It's like this really strong feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also highly charged emotionally, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just like, what on earth, where has this come
Mm-hmm.
from, this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's power, so it's also a
Mm-hmm.
bit scary, to be
Yeah.
on the other end of that. It's kind of like, how do I deal with this,
Mm-hmm.
um
Maybe that's
but
even
that
why menopause is being so vilified in some way. Of course, this comes in, like,
mm,
I understand, because our generation, I'd say, you know, women from Jane's generation, like our generation, maybe even one generation below me, we're kind of like doing this healing. Maybe the younger, my kids, maybe, I don't know how their menopause is going to be, but what I feel is there, when you're saying it's visceral, it does feel like a visceral, um, like readjustment to reality. It's almost like, oh, I coped. I actually was tame, not tame in a bad way. I'm not meaning like you have to just treat everybody badly. That's not what I mean. I just mean like, um, there is a lot of actually patriarchy. Let's use this term because people understand it.
yeah,
That I think it's, of course, is a lot of women didn't take their place. So to allow the line to just run rampant, it's a combination. It's not just one thing. Like, so for
yeah,
example, the way I see is like, how does it show up in Brazil? And I say that without any judgment. So there's no judgment. And there is the recognition that I see the elder women in Brazil, for example, instead of them dictating culture and being there and claiming it, they are still trying to be young and appease culture. So they're
yeah,
not, so then they're still letting the younger men, testosterone, do whatever they're doing, because you know, I have recently, just a good friend of mine, I just shared in a conversation I had recently. He was so beautiful. He said to me, I just initiate things. I initiate things. And sometimes they go crazy. I need a woman to stop me, to say, stop. Why are you doing this? And that was so beautiful, because to me, there was a microcosm of what happens in patriarchy. If you don't have the women also claiming the space, going like, no, 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 you stop. No, no more doing this.
Yeah.
No more war in Ukraine. No, not doing like, but you need a lot of us and a lot of that energy. And we have a lot to heal. So I see this fire, this anger, the physiology. It's like there's so much
Yeah.
that I have coped with, you know, in my past, and I didn't even understand and disassociated. So it feels like a deep healing, and it's clumsy. You know, I don't want to explode on everybody, but
It's clumsy, but it's necessary. And I think it's about finding ways to harness it and
mm,
embrace it. But firstly, allow it, but hopefully without, hurting anybody else. But to me, it's that, like you said, like you sort of did this contracted, fist with your hand. And it's kind of like we are in when we're younger, we're told to be a certain way. And especially, my generation and previous generations, being your generation, I don't know how it was in Brazil, but it was like you had to be a good girl. You
mm,
had to be a good girl, and you had to be quiet and just sit over there and look pretty. That was the
mm,
general kind of,
mm, mm,
and it's and my experience of childhood wasn't that. Like, it was a free, like, it was, I mean, I was told to be
mm,
good, but when I
mm,
look back to that maiden self, there was also this wildness in
mm,
me, and it feels like she's come back again. She kind
That's
of disappears,
beautiful.
she disappears in the top, when I was talking about that top half of the circle
Mm,
in the
mm,
summer,
mm,
when you're busy, 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 trying on all these different types of ways to be, which is sort of what that top half is, that you're answering the call from without, which, by the way, Christiane Northrup, I got that idea from. But this idea that is just occurring to me of, you try on all these things, it's like the last part, or the last
mm,
quadrant after
mm,
menopause, and the first quadrant, which is our childhood, is where we don't have those things. We're sort
That's
of
beautiful.
born naked. We're born naked, literally, but
Yeah,
also metaphorically.
yeah,
And then we get older and we try on all these different things, and then menopause arrives, and then it's like we have to shed shed
yes,
it all again.
yeah. Then
And
it,
it's
yeah.
like the maiden comes back to remind us of that wild, that sort of Artemis,
Mm,
uh, you know, archetype, running in the forest wild with her hounds, and her
mm.
other sort of nymphs, just this sort of this freedom.
I love that, and it feels really true where I live. So I live in Bellingen, in this beautiful town in New South Wales, Australia, but it's still not like when I see postmenopausal women in the mainstream, that's not what you see, which saddens me, because I imagine that's probably they have the hormonal, like Jane Collins says, and I love how she says it. She talks about, well, the accommodating hormone is leaving you, so estrogen,
Yeah,
and therefore you're not accommodating anymore. But that's your role, to not accommodate anymore, and to
yeah,
dictate how be a wise woman for culture, for yourself, for your village or
yeah,
your tribe, which is beautiful. And it saddens me that still in that phase, for the majority of women, they'll probably feel those feelings, which are natural eruptions trying to heal them in some sort, and then they put something else on top of it, hormone replacement therapy, whatever it is. And I totally understand it too, because sometimes it's too dramatic to just completely change too quickly in your life, if you might not
yeah,
even have resources to support you, or but then it sends me, because then they never have the chance to do what you just said, to run wild again, or to rediscover themselves, or all that kind of stuff. And yeah.
yeah. I remember when, for me, that I think I was 43, 40. maybe a bit older, 44, 45.
Mm,
Anyway, I was still had a very regular cycle, but there was definitely this kind of, there were rumblings
mm,
of
mm,
perimenopause. I
mm,
knew,
mm,
and I had to take the car into the mechanic. And I won't bother with the details, but
mm,
basically we had this falling out and he was
mm,
ripping me off. I just
mm,
knew that he was ripping me off.
mm, mm.
And so I had a bit of an argument with him, and then I just left his workshop and went back to my car, which was parked out on the street. And then I just went, no, this is not right. And so I went
Mm,
back in to have this big argument with
mm,
him and to
mm,
fight. Whereas before I would have just gone home and been a bit cross and
mm,
not had that confrontation. And
mm,
my daughter who's 17 now, she's just like, oh mum, do you have to do this? Do you have to do, because now
mm.
once you start, you're just like, no, if there's an injustice, I'm going to talk about it. I don't care if anybody sees me having a bit of a go, it's that kind of attitude comes in. But anyway, he wasn't there. He was upstairs in the office bit, and I'd borrowed a car. They have the little rent, you
Mm,
take your car and then they lend your car. And the keys that I'd borrowed that I'd just brought back before I had this big argument were on the countertop. And
mm.
I looked around, I took the keys, I got in his little rent-a-car thing that he'd lent me, and I stole it. Basically, I stole the car because I was so angry with him and I wanted to kind of show him that he wasn't gonna. And I rang him and I was like, because we were arguing because he wouldn't give me my money back. And so I was like, hey, I've got your car, so you need to give me my money back.
I've got your car. I'm
Yeah.
not.
I was like, I became this gangster. And
Yeah,
like
that's
afterwards,
fun.
anyway, he was horrible. He was like, what? And I could hear him go over to the window and look in the street. Where's my car? You took my car. Where? And I was really cool and collect. I'll give you your car back when you give me my money back. It's
Oh, that's
just
so
doing this kind of.
funny. I love the
But anyway,
story.
then I got a bit worried. I did get a bit worried, and he said, I'm going to call the police. And then he did. And so I got worried and thought, oh shit, I have done something very bad. So I rang the police, and another policeman there were two policemen in the station, one talking to him and one talking to me.
Oh, that's so
And
funny.
the one that spoke to me said, look, you better get that car back, Ray. You've got half an hour to get the car back, because if you don't, you'll be looking at a criminal offense. And I was like, but he took my money. And they were like, no, sorry, that's a civil offense, nothing to do with us. You just got to get the car back.
Did
So
he pay you?
yeah, I
Did
took
he
the
pay
car
you?
back.
No.
We did get the money back, but not from him, from the credit card company in the end.
Oh,
So we did
oh.
get it back, but yeah, but it was that just, but there was a part of me, I suppose,
Mm,
the good girl in
yeah.
me after that. Like I thought it was hilarious, but there was another part going, what the hell did I just do? I've never stolen anything, and I just took a car. It's like,
That is really funny. I think it's well, what comes to me, and it's like, because okay, I'll say something. Before, I was talking to my co-facilitator. I facilitate retreats in Brazil, and it's with a male facilitator, and now we're kind of like shifting the way we want to facilitate, and this is being provoked by me. I'm like, I want to run the retreat, the last retreat of our program, differently. And anyway, we were talking about it, and as I was describing, he's like, tell me more about this experience, tell me more about being a woman. So he was really being curious. And then when I was saying something to him about, when you were saying about being a good girl, and so I was sharing with him the experience that I have in a lot of spaces where the women don't speak about it, and they contract a little bit if they've been criticized. And of course, it does, that's why PMS has the reputation it does, because then at some point in the cycle it backfires. And learning how to work with estrogen, it's an interesting thing as well, because when Jane talks about the accommodating hormone, I can see that our role in society also is is to, in some ways, to accommodate. And the hormone does a brilliant job at helping you wake up in the middle of the night for your kids, or tend to sick kids, and make lunch boxes, and tend to the home, and tend to work, and your colleagues, and all this love, and all this
yeah,
holding. But so the way that he phrased it to me, he said, but it's probably really hard for women to speak up if they're drugged to not speak up. And I was like, that's an interesting frame, but I can see that, like drugged by your body, but your body is asking you to cope a little bit, when you have and then at some point in your cycle to not cope, like, and learning how to do this dance. And I think it's probably so important to, then it makes it even more important to do the coping and the not coping when you're cycling, so you learn the flavor of both. But maybe in our culture we just have we have the coping hormones, but then we transport the idea of that to the other part of the cycle and go like, I'll just behave. I don't know, is it making sense to you? Like the good girl is a part of an archetype, but not the whole cycle. It's a little bit of it, but not the entire
Yeah,
bit. And then we just transport to the whole cycle, and then we become this stagnant archetype instead of all
yeah,
of them.
yes, it does make sense. And I think some of it is in response to this just being too busy and not resting. Because if you don't retreat, because that time in the cycle when we do get like a feeling compression and like tension and steam, is when actually what we really need to do is just go and be solitary beings and
Mm,
rest and be
yes.
internal and do
Yeah.
art or
Yeah.
meditate or
Yeah.
sit in the garden,
Yeah.
walk, like not try and do these 101 million things that the other time in the cycle it is fine to do that. We can
Mm-hmm.
cope with that, but it's when we don't do that. And it's the same in perimenopause and menopause. It's like there is a calling inward of, I don't want to be so busy.
Mm,
I really try and not have too much happening, like,
mm,
because I love going slowly. I love it, you
mm,
know,
mm,
but the outside world is requiring not to. And
mm,
it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one because it's also,
mm,
I think, what you were talking about, elders and wisdom and being able to say, no, that's not right, or offer
mm.
wisdom. You can't just go and become a hermit. There's a responsibility to
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
and to share that wisdom and presence. But it's kind of that, it's also just making space. And I guess
Mm,
maybe all
mm,
the lockdowns we had were in one way an opportunity to rest
mm-hmm,
and be in that.
mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
think it has changed people's psyches a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I was just thinking, as I was hearing you speak, I was thinking, well, I don't even think, imagine in this hypothetical world, if all women were honoring their cycles and actually truly slowing down when the cycle is asking them to, then progress the way we have it wouldn't be possible. Like it just would, because you have 50% of the population stopping. And then, of course, the other people get tired too. They will be reminded to, like, that's the way we go, that's the way we roll. It's not
Yeah.
just that, it's like, so then it's almost like the cycle is teaching the line how to find its rhythm. And by us kind of like, instead of us doing that, by us allowing ourselves, and I mean, and of course, and when I say allowing ourselves, it's not a thought, it's just,
Mm,
it's so hard to see
yeah.
ourselves when we are. I was trying to say to a male friend as well, I was like, when you're cyclical, it's hard to see that you're cyclical, because you have this idea. I mean, when I remember when I was 20, in my 20s, I would have my period, but that's all about it. Like I would be a line that every now and again had bled, like, in my
Yeah.
mind I wasn't like this rhythmic thing. I was just
Yeah.
aligned with a problem or something.
You know what's occurring to me as you speak, because I really love this image of the line and the full circle, is, if you look at the outside of an old steam train,
Mm,
and they have their wheels, and then they have like a rod that is attached to the wheels, and the
yeah.
rod, the wheel takes, and the rod kind of does this movement
Oh, that's
because it's attached to the
beautiful.
wheel.
Oh, I love this. Oh, Shala, I love this. It's so beautiful. Yeah, because in some ways, it's like what my friend said, like, stop me. I have all this creativity. And I was just thinking,
Mm,
it's like giving the movement to the line. Come
Yeah.
flow in my cycle. Tag along in my cycle,
Yeah. Still be aligned,
yeah,
still
you'll
be
still be
aligned, but
aligned.
just know that it's going to move like this.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the image. Ah, that's really lovely. I know that we're kind of coming, into the closing, but I just really wanted you to share a bit. I noticed that I forgot to say the name of your book, which is Changing Woman, and I also
Hmm.
you have another book, which is it Aura's Gold? The name
Yes.
Aura's
Yeah.
Gold, which it's a little bit about. Does it weave with the cycle as well? That one I haven't read that one.
Um, it does. There's not too much cyclical stuff. That one's a fiction. Like, so
Mhm.
the my Changing Woman, and then I also wrote a book for breastfeeding women who suffer with mastitis a lot. So those are
Mhm.
non-fiction books to
Mm,
really companion and partner with the body and make friends with it and
mm,
become sort of, yeah, walk those transitions with consciousness. But the Aura's Goal came out of my experience as being a doula, and really it was all my frustration with the system.
mhm,
And so it's about this girl who loses her mother and sister in a house fire and goes to live with her aunt
mm,
in South Australia. And her aunt, and it's actually, I mean, it was written in 2016, but there'd been like a big pandemic, and there was this special police force, so everything had really contracted, and birthing had to be in these special safety centers. And
wow.
but her aunt was an undercover midwife,
Oh, wow.
allowing women to birth
Mm,
yeah, in normal physiological way. And it was about how she sort of navigated that, because she'd been indoctrinated and, trained to be afraid and in the system, but she
mhm.
loved her aunt. And yeah, and it's her story.
Oh,
It's a bit of a love story.
it rings. It's very familiar. Now I'm like, I have your books. I'm gonna read it. I
Yeah, well, it's
mm,
mm.
no,
It
sorry, it
was
was
good fun to write. It was good fun to write. She came to me, the character came. I had this really bad flu for 2 weeks.
mm.
I'd never had the flu before. And I woke up and there was suddenly this character called Aura. And it really was that she sort of, it just came out. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
So,
beautiful. I love that.
mm,
I wanted to just open space if you wanted to share anything about your journey or closing words in relationship to this, to all the things that we were talking about, and being cyclical in a more linear world, or your journey, or post-menopausal journey, or anything that you want to say, final words, closing words, or
um, it would really be to encourage encourage women out there to be curious, first of all, about their bodies and about their cycles, and to not be in the fear of it,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and to recognize that, yes, of course, we all are are challenged by change,
mm-hmm,
whether that be, change on the material level, or change on the physiological level, spiritual level. Like, there's so many changes, but to just be curious and to go in and go in and be with the intention of partnering with your body, because you've only got one body, and our bodies are amazing,
mm-hmm,
absolutely amazing. Like, I love the human body
mm,
completely, and I'm in awe of it. And so
mm,
it really is to try and have that reverence for the body, without trying to, look at it. We have this relationship with our body. So much of our relationship with our body is in a mirror or on a
mm-hmm,
screen,
mm-hmm,
from the outside in.
mm-hmm,
And I would love it if we could all just go in a little bit more and feel the feelings, first of all. Like, if you are really angry, it's like
mm,
to sit and go, well, first to move it, to because
mm,
anger is best with movement, to
mm,
shake your limbs and
mm,
really shake it. But then if there's like a feeling of sadness, to sit with that and go, where is it in my body? Where is my body
mm,
feeling this? Where is the sensations? And
mm,
yeah, and then the other one is to educate. educate yourself about what's ahead. You know,
mm,
that's why I do the work I do with the girls and why I wrote the book. It's like the more you know about what's ahead,
mm,
then the more you're going to go, okay, so this is happening, rather than what's happening to me, I don't know, and
mm,
rushing off to the doctor
mm,
and expecting the doctor to know your body as well as you do, and they never will. And I'm
mm.
not saying doctors are, you know,
No,
not
it's true.
necessary, but it's this thing of you're the authority of your own body first, and
Mm.
then you seek the health professionals that you need to support you in your journey.
Yes, I very much agree with you. And I think that if you, like you're just saying, if women don't have the narrative that that's a bad thing, that's already a bonus. Because, and curiosity, just like you said, curiosity opens up all sorts of things. Like if I'm feeling this, I have this teacher, and she's not a cycles teacher, but she's great about landing the body, landing us back into the body. And she talks about, this is a feature and not a bug. If we just notice that our cycles is a feature, not a bug. Our menopause, it's a
I love
feature.
that.
So then curiosity, it's a feature. So what's this feature? If I'm looking through the world through this time, how I'm experiencing things, it's just curiosity. And today is more, you know, the waves of my being are more uh wild, and sometimes it's gonna be this very gentle ocean or something. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah, and I love that you talk about waves, because we have tides within us. You know, when we're
mm,
bleeding, it's we do have those tides. Like
mm,
we are
mm,
so watery, and
mm.
yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to stop, actually, with the ebb and flow of life, and how amazing that us women get to feel that within our
Yeah,
bodies, you know.
yeah. No, I agree, and I'm super grateful for your time, and yeah, I appreciated reading your book, the bits that I have read halfway through. And thank you for the conversation. It was super fun. And yeah.
Yeah, it was lovely to connect again. It was lovely to talk as well, and just yeah, spin off each other's thoughts.
Yes.
Mm.
Thank you. Big love to you.
And thank you for your work. I love it, and I love the images that you've given me today.
Oh, I love
So
the
yeah,
train as
it's
well. So
great.
that's already in my, I'm thinking, because I'm publishing a Substack with the videos. I'm thinking, oh, somewhere I'm gonna try to find this the train image, and I'm gonna quote you.
Yeah,
I love that one. It's so beautiful. Yeah, it stayed with me. Thank
yeah,
you.
great work. You
Big
take
love.
care.
Bye.
Yeah, big hug to you. Bye.